There are either of the two tools for developing new applications, but one in particular stands ahead of the pack. We're talking, of course, about the Docker Configuration Management tool. According to InsightsDice.com, the demand for software services had brought the development operations, that is, the DevOps jobs, into tech hiring spotlight. The technical skills that the DevOps professionals must have are from Linux fundamentals to the DevOps tools like the Docker. Welcome to Simplilearn's YouTube channel, and in this particular video we will be understanding the concept of Docker in 10 minutes. But before getting started, let's have a look at the objectives for this lesson. In this session, you will have a good understanding of what Docker is, architecture of Docker, major concepts of Docker tool, companies using Docker, and also run a few Docker commands. Docker is an open source software platform used to build, design, and manage applications. The purpose of introducing Docker was to make apps work faster. With Docker, every individual can isolate an application from an environment and deploy it on another environment using Docker container. Now, you must be wondering what a Docker container must be. Docker container is a very important component of the Docker ecosystem. Docker container is an executable software package that includes all the dependencies such as frameworks, libraries, etc. that are required to execute an application on other environments. Docker facilitates the process of testing code faster and reduces the time-consuming process between writing and running a code. Docker does all this with the help of containerization that helps in deploying and managing applications. In simple terms, Docker helps a user to run code almost in every environment, whether you want to run your application in a local machine or on the cloud infrastructure. Docker solves all your problems with minimal effort. Also, containers can be moved from one host to another without any major changes. Now, let us move into our next section. What is Docker architecture? Docker is a client-server app. Docker daemon serves your application to create, deploy, shut down, etc. and the Docker client communicates with the daemon to manage its services. Client and server are found in Docker Engine. Docker Engine or Docker is a client-server application that builds and executes containers using Docker components. Now we know the major components of Docker. What are the other components which are used to build and execute Docker containers? Well, the other two components you need to know are the Docker image and Docker registry. The Docker image is a template of instructions that are used to create containers. Image is a read-only pattern that is used to build a container. The image can contain an Apache Tomcat or Kafka with Ubuntu operating system. You can add, update, and share your images. An image is built using a file called Dockerfile. Docker image has multiple layers. Whenever a developer builds a container, a new Docker layer is automatically created on top of image layers, and it is called as the container layer. A Docker image provides a separate read or write layer to each container, and whenever a user makes a change to the container, that gets reflected upon the specific container layer alone. Now moving forward, let's understand what a Docker registry is. Docker registry is a service to the host and it distributes Docker images amongst users. A repository is a collection of Docker images. In registry, a user can distinguish between Docker images with their tag names. Docker has its own cloud-based registry called Docker Hub, where users can store and distribute container images. Docker registry has public and private repositories. In registry, push and pull commands are used to interact with Docker images. The Docker registry has two basic commands. One is the push command and another is the pull command. Push command basically stores a Docker image in Docker registry, whereas the pull command retrieves an image from the Docker registry. In simple terms, a Docker registry is a storage and content delivery service that holds a bunch of Docker images stored in different tagged versions. A Docker workflow is a sequence of actions on registries, images, and containers. It allows a team of developers to create containers based on a customized image pulled from a registry and deploy and run them on a host server. Moving ahead, we have our next question, that is, who uses Docker? Increased running capacity is just one example of how Docker is often preferred choice over virtual machines. The famous global researcher Gartner predicts by the year 2023, more than 50% of the companies will be adopting Docker containers in production. However, a serverless container like Docker will have the revenue from a small base of $465 million in 2020 to reach to $944 million in the year 2024. Let's move ahead and see what all companies are using Docker. Some of the famous companies that use Docker for the growth of their business are Spotify, Yelp, ADB, eBay, Expedia, Groupon, BBC, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also other companies like the New York Times, Oxford University Press, PayPal, Sage, Shopify uses Docker. Now, let's understand why Expedia uses Docker and how does Docker bring benefits to their business. Expedia has more than 9,000 Docker containers running in AWS ECS service. Expedia chose Docker to speed up the building and deploying process of the application, which was possible due to the various Docker components like Docker Registry and Docker Swarm. Now let us look into the demo in which we will be creating a Docker file and we will also be executing a few Docker commands. Suppose you have set up your development environment and the workflow should be like, first to create an image and then Docker file for each component of your application. We need to create containers and execute the required commands. And in the end, test, share and deploy your complete containerized application. In this demo, let us focus on step 1 and step 2. First, create a Docker file. In case you have some source code and a Docker file, then proceed to build your first Docker image. And ensure that the containers which are launched from those images work correctly. Then, let's check if we already have any Docker images. As a result, we can see no images are present here. So, let's create a new one. To create a new Docker image, execute this command. This downloading process may take a while. Now when you execute the command, you can see a list of Docker images on the screen. Now, among these two images, let's delete one named Simplilearn. If you execute docker rm Simplilearn, which is the remove command, as a result, one of your Docker images will be deleted. In case you want to remove Ubuntu from Docker image, that can also be done by executing the docker image rm Ubuntu command. Moving on to the next one, let's see a few Docker container commands. So now, before executing container commands, let's first pull Jenkins from the Docker Hub. Now, the files are being downloaded from the hub. So let's wait for this pull activity to get completed. So once the process is done, execute the command docker images. Here you can see Jenkins is getting downloaded into your Docker system. Now let's create a container out of that. So execute the command docker create Jenkins. This will help you create a Docker container. Now when you execute docker ps space -a, you can see a container which is in the created mode. In case you want to start a container, execute the command docker start file name. Here our file name is tender Napier. But if you want your container Jenkins to be in the running state, type docker run Jenkins. Now you can see the process has started. So let's wait for a while. So this is the process of creating a container. And with that, we have come to an end of this Docker in 10 minutes video. I hope it was informative and interesting. If you have any questions about the topics covered in this video, please ask away in the comment section below. Our team of experts will be happy to resolve your queries. Thanks for watching, stay safe and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.